Good morning and welcome to the Rapid City Planning Commission meeting for February 10th, 2022. If any member of the audience wishes to speak to an item on the Planning Commission agenda today, there are speaker request forms on the table along the left wall. Please fill out the request with the agenda number of the item you wish to speak to and hand it to the staff seated on the left of the dais. At this time, we would also like to ask that if any member of the audience has a cell phone or other electronic device, that you either turn it off or turn the ringer to silent. If you need to take a call, please step out to the hallway so the meeting is not disrupted. Items 1 through 3 have been placed on the consent calendar today and may be approved as a group. Action will be taken on all consent items in accordance with staff's recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed from the consent calendar by any planning commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration at this time. The findings of this Planning Commission are recommendations to the City Council. The City Council will make the final decision with the exception of the following item. Item 3, 21PD047. The Rapid City Planning Commission's action on this item is final unless any party appeals that decision to the Rapid City Council. All appeals must be submitted in writing to the Department of Community Development by close of business on the 7th full calendar day following action by the Planning Commission. Are there any items 1 through 3 that staff would like removed from the consent calendar?
No, thank you.
Any planning commissioner would like to remove items 1 through 3 or any item? And is there any audience member that would like any of the items 1 through 3 removed for separate consideration? The chair would then entertain a motion to approve items 1 through 3 in accordance with staff's recommendations. All right, Vince made the motion to approve items 1 through 3 in accordance with staff's recommendation, and Rachel seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries. Item number 4.
Good morning. Item number 4 is 22UR001, which is a conditional use permit to expand the on-sale liquor use in conjunction with a casino. The property is located at 1624 East St. Patrick Street. It is known as the Market Square Strip Mall. It is located just to the east of Campbell Street. Currently in the strip mall there is Polly's Pizzeria and Subs. There is a casino next door. There's an Anytime Fitness, and there is a vape shop as well. The applicant is proposing to expand the casino use into the 2 adjacent suites, which are currently occupied by Anytime Fitness. The property is zoned General Commercial District. Future land use is identified as mixed-use commercial, and St. Patrick Street is classified as a principal arterial street on the city's major street plan. This shows the layout of the building. Polly's Pizzeria and Subs is located right here. They also have a conditional use permit for on-sale liquor at their establishment. The existing casino is located right here. And then the applicant is proposing to expand into this portion of the strip mall that is partially occupied by Anytime Fitness now, I believe, but it's kind of located behind Anytime Fitness. Again, another site plan. This would be their new floor plan identifying the casino located right back here. Their occupancy calculations showing the new and existing suites, and their parking calculations as well. They do have sufficient parking on the site. And some site plans. This is the existing casino, and you can see Anytime Fitness to the right. Again, there's a possibility for expansion behind the existing casino and sort of behind Anytime Fitness. And again, the picture of Anytime Fitness next door. Conditional use permit sign is posted on the property. This is looking across St. Patrick Street. There is a storage lot, and there are some residential uses across St. Patrick Street as well. This is looking to the west along St. Patrick Street. There's an Ace Hardware and a Family Fare supermarket just to the west. and then looking to the east along St. Patrick Street. Again, this is the proposed expansion of on-sale liquor use in conjunction with the casino, and I'm available for any questions.
Thanks, Kip. Any questions for staff on item number 4? Eric Hikas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can we see your parking calculations again?
Certainly.
Kip? They look complicated.
So it's kind of hard to see here, but they do have parking right down here. So yes, there's a multitude of uses in the suites. There are various parking calculations, but they do meet our minimum parking requirements. I believe they have excess parking as well.
Thank you. Very comprehensive.
Other comments or questions on item 4? If not, I'd look for a motion. Okay. Karen made the motion to approve item number 4 with the stipulations as listed, and Rachel seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5. And on item number 5, Haven will be abstaining from this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kelly's actually going to make the presentation on the details of this site, but we thought it may be beneficial if we just gave you an overview of the difference between a medical cannabis cultivation establishment. You've seen so many dispensary establishments, and it's important to note that for dispensaries throughout the city, they were allowed in many, many zoning designations. We looked at it similar to a pharmacy. Anywhere that it was allowed retail, you could do a dispensary. In addition, the ordinance said that if you are 1,000 foot from a school and 500 feet from a church or child care center or residential district or public park, if you were more than 500 feet, then you're permitted. Those that you saw were applications for dispensaries that were always 1,000 feet from a school, but they were within 500 feet of one of those other 4 uses, even though they fell within the right zoning designation. For cultivation and manufacturing, it's far more restrictive. They are only allowed in heavy industrial and light industrial. In addition, they are always conditional use permits, and they only qualify as a conditional use permit when they are more than 1,000 foot from a school and more than 500 feet from the other 4 uses. If it fell within that 500 feet of the other 4 uses, we would not be able to accept the application. So I comment on this just to identify to you that by virtue of the ordinance, it's really limiting the locations of the city for the use. And unlike the dispensaries where we did want you to look specific at that use, what we're really doing with the cultivation and manufacturing conditional use permits is looking at the operation of those facilities, knowing that by ordinance it's already restricted them greatly, and ensuring that they're meeting all of the requirements set forth by the regulations specific to odor and security and waste management, et cetera. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kelly.
Good morning.
Morning.
So yes, our first cultivation application. Kind of exciting to get to this point finally. This property is located at 1820 Rand Road. As you can see in the aerial, and we did note in the staff report that it is auto repair uses to the north and west of the property. The zoning is light industrial district. And the future land use is also light industrial. Rand Road is a collector on the city's major street plan. So here's the elevation of the building. It is an existing building, and you'll see that in a couple slides forward when I show you the pictures. And this one, you can just kind of see where the signage is. They just have a simple sign that says BHCC, which is just a logo. There's no other embellishments or anything like that. And their operations plan does discuss that this will not be open to the public in any way. It would have between 4 and 8 employees working from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. potentially, Monday through Sunday, but that there will be no public access to the building at any time. This is their landscaping plan. They do have enough landscaping points. They needed 86,000 or so and are providing 92,266. Along with parking, they have an excessive amount of parking for the use. They only need 13 with 1 ADA van accessible space, and they are providing 27 with 2 ADA van accessible spaces. So this is looking actually east at the subject property. You will note that they did post their conditional use sign. It is an existing industrial building in a kind of an industrial area. So this is looking south down Rand Road, and then across the property to that auto repair use that we mentioned earlier. And then this is north along Rand Road in the opposite direction. We do have the applicant in the audience today if there are any questions. And I'm also here for any questions as well.
Mr. Chair, if I might add.
Yeah, Vicki?
So if you look at the stipulations of approval, it covers all of the different concerns we had that may create a nuisance, like waste management and security, and especially odor. And in our ordinance, we wrote that if the normal person can smell cannabis at the property line, we can shut this business down. We've been very clear to anyone who has worked with us on any of these uses that that's something that we will be monitoring very carefully. We need to preserve the odor that some communities failed to do years ago when other states started allowing cannabis use. We're doing this later in the game, and we reached out to states such as Minnesota, who has done an excellent job of controlling the odor, and the odor control plans that we are seeing do support that we're mirroring what those states have done to ensure that we don't have a community that smells like cannabis when you hit the city limits.
Thanks, Vicki. Vince, do you have some questions for staff on this one?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to learn a little bit more about security, what I can, because if you know, the building's only going to be occupied for 12 hours, I mean, what's the 24-hour type of security offered?
So the applicant, like I said, is in the audience, but they do state that there will be 24-hour security guards posted on site. There are cameras indoor and outdoor. There will be I don't know if you got a chance, we did link the security plan to it. It's quite long and intensive. Right. There's very specific requirements that the state has, like the cameras have to be a certain DPI, they have to have a backup system that can run for at least 2 hours on a backup generator. So there's very, very specific security measures that have to go into place for the state to even issue the license. And so we're just kind of mirroring what they do, but they have outlined a very, very detailed security plan in their operations manual.
Okay, thank you.
We do have a speaker request form from Jake Johnson, who I believe is the applicant. If we could call him up if he'd like to say a few words. When you're up at the mic, if you could give your name and address, just so we have it for our records.
Excellent. Hello. Oh, okay. I am Jake Johnson with BHCC. My address is 3913 Ridgemore Drive in Rapid City. And yes, I kind of wanted to speak a little bit about our security. So thanks for asking about that. That was the main purpose of my speaker request form. So the former use of this building was actually a government building. It was a GSA building. So the security on it is already top notch. We've already contracted with IntelliPro, who's basically bid a state-approved security system that matches all the cannabis laws. And they're ready to move on that as soon as we get approval and a building permit, et cetera. So we feel very good about our security, and also all the neighbors that we've spoken with feel very comfortable with it as well, as it kind of protects a lot of those, auto care centers and such as well. If you guys have any other questions, let me know, and I appreciate your time.
Okay. Eric Ottenbacher?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just curious, how many vacant lots are there in and around that area that have the potential for use, or any plans to use any? Thought is that if if this goes into this place and we have vacant lots in there, will that limit what can go into those particular vacant lots in the future?
Mr. Chair, I can answer that.
Vicki?
No, any use that would otherwise be allowed in those zoning districts are not limited due to this use. Similar to on sale, when you have a neighborhood that's a mix of perhaps apartments and commercial, we do look at when the on sale wants to come in, where the location of residential and churches and those types of uses. But once they're there, if a church chooses to go in next door, that's not a hindrance to them. They go into it knowing, eyes wide open, that they're going in next to that on sale. Similarly here, our ordinance is written that once this is established, if someone chooses to come in and bring forward a use that's either permitted or conditional, that they could do so pursuant to the ordinance. They would not be hindered by this.
Okay, thank you, Vicki. No more questions.
Eric Heikus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple things. On your landscape and site plans, you have future building indicated. Is there, can we shed some light on that? Is that a phased strategy? Maybe that's just the sketches that they overlaid, but I look at the landscape plan here and the site plan. It says future building out in front.
Right, so what the applicant has done here is, this is a blueprint that was created initially when this building was built. And so they were kind of reusing the scale drawings that were already created. So that's just, just from the previous phasing of the building. The building is entirely built now and will only require a building permit for interior alterations and any security measures to the doors and windows.
Okay, thank you. Well, I do have a couple more things. It looks like it's a nice landscaping plan. Almost looks like an apple orchard, the way it's laid out. Just an observation of mine. How is police and fire with this plan?
So fire has given us some very specific stipulations that are outlined in the steps and they also gave them kind of an outline of what they would want upon issuance of a building permit should they be approved. Sprinkler protected, going through some of those specifics. And so the applicant has been working with the fire, as have all the medical cannabis dispensaries as well. The police were routed the application as well and had no comment. So we don't foresee any issues from them as well.
Thank you. There's a really good resource, Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design for Site Planning, that I think this is a good example of. You can see into the site. It looks patrollable. There's good movement. So from first blush, it looks like it fits pretty well. So thanks. Those are my questions. Thank you for answering them.
I'm going to jump in while there's a break. The first stipulation talks about the establishment requiring the state permitting, and then if it loses that permitting or registration certificate, that we can revoke this conditional use permit. It's more of a general question. As we see these start to happen in our community, what's the review plan? Or is it something where the state would send a, communication with who's approved and who's not yearly, 6 monthly?
We
few years?
anticipate that licensing would come back to our finance department that does the city licensing. There's some extensive collaboration between, we need to do provisional licensing, then it goes to the state, then they finalize, then it comes back to us, and then we finalize our licensing. And so that relationship and communication will continue, similarly as it does for other uses as well. We do have a procedure within our regulations that does allow for a revocation of a conditional use permit. The applicant is put on notice. They have an opportunity to address the issue, but it does come back before the Planning Commission for your final action.
And I guess my follow-up is, who does the sort of the enforcement of the closure if somebody loses their state issue permit? Is it the state that actually comes out and puts a notice on the door or something? Or is it the city that has to do that?
I think it would be twofold. It would initiate with the state, and then it would ultimately end in the lap of code enforcement.
Okay.
And again, they're a part of our department, so the communication is strong.
Okay, sounds good. Any other questions or comments from the commission on item number 5? Eric Ottenbacher.
Yeah, one other question. Under one of the documents, it talks about the process for handling cash. If this is not open to the public, what are we talking about here?
So this facility would provide the product to the dispensaries. So they would be the actual location where the cannabis is grown and harvested and packaged, and then in some way transported to the dispensaries for sale.
Okay, so, okay, I got it. All right, thank you.
Rachel?
Sorry, this is really more of an observation. We have so many microbreweries, and some of them are kind of intended to be more like a tasting room right off the bat, and others are in more industrial areas. And, sometimes they also have tasting rooms, I find it fascinating. Again, this is just a comment. I just find it interesting that, with medical cultivation, that there's absolutely no opportunity for a tasting room on site. And I appreciate, there is? Am I wrong?
If the applicant were to secure a dispensary license on this location and the uses were entirely separated from each other, they could hypothetically do that if the state still allowed it, but the state is still working on their rules to say.
Mr. Chair?
Vicky?
So in order for anyone to do that or have any public place where you could use the product,
Tasting.
we would have to create what would be known as a hospitality provision. Some states have it. We don't have it currently in South Dakota. At our South Dakota Planner Conference, we discussed that at length, that it's not here yet. We need to take some baby steps. Let's see what we've got now. And it's not to say, I think Kelly's right, in time, it could come down the pike, but it would have to require some revisions all the way at the state level.
And I do apologize. I meant to imply that they would be able to hypothetically sell the product on the same site as grow it currently. If they were to obtain a dispensary license as well as a cultivation license, they would need to be separate, and the uses would need to be separate from each other. I didn't mean actually tasting. Sorry about that.
I thought that was, a lot of people, and again, this is the medical marijuana facility. It's not actually recreational, but if this were recreational, people draw a lot of conclusions between marijuana and alcohol, and I find it interesting when we kind of deviate from, the rules are harsher on one than the other, so I wanted to point that out. Thank you, that's all.
Yeah.
I think when we look back at the rules and regulations when Prohibition was first lifted, we're going through that Stone Age again. So time will tell.
Other questions or comments on item 5? Not. Anybody have a motion on it?
Move approval with stipulations.
All right. Eric Heikus made the motion to approve item 5 with the stipulations as listed, and Vince seconded that motion. Any comments on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The item is approved, with Haven abstaining. We're moving now to item number 6. I'm going to have to abstain on item number 6, so Rachel's going to take over, and I'll step off.
I might just stay in my seat. I can see the board from here.
Good morning, Sarah Hansel with the Planning Projects Division. Item number 6 is a proposal for tax increment financing for the proposed Block 5 project. You'll recall that the Planning Commission reviewed an initial plan development for the same project on the November 24th meeting. The Tax Increment Financing Review Committee reviewed this project on January 5th and did recommend that it move forward, that staff create a project plan and move forward with the resolution, so we are making that presentation today. We'd like to start discussions of tax increment financing with a quick overview of how this economic development tool works. So this graph has a y-axis, which represents the value of property, which is how the level of taxation is derived. The x-axis represents time and how valuation and property tax revenue changes after an investment using tax increment financing. So prior to the creation of a tax increment district, there's a given level of property value. You generally expect this value to be low, to be declining because of blighted conditions, difficult to develop property or something like that. So a tax increment financing district is created at this point in time. Now, whatever this value of property is before the district is created is the amount is captured and is identified as what we call the base valuation. And that valuation continues to generate revenues for the taxing district, so the city, the school, the water district. And that base valuation continues through the life of the district. However, investments are made, public improvements are created, and the value over time of the area increases. And that increase in funds is called the incremental value, and that's what's used to pay back the public improvements for the project. After 20 years, or after the project pays off, whichever occurs first, the district is dissolved, at which point this now is the entire amount of increase in valuation and subsequent increase in tax revenue that's created and made available. So that's just an overview of how the economic development tool works. Talk a little bit now about the proposed project. This project is located at 525 St. Joseph Street. It's about 1.37 acres in the city's central business district. It's currently owned by the city of Rapid City and is used as a surface lease parking lot. I'll point out early in the presentation that the existing leaseholders are currently in the process of being relocated to other places in the downtown public parking system, so that anyone who currently has a lease is going to continue to be able to park downtown whether they live or work downtown. Our parking operations division and manager has been working very diligently to make sure that everyone who currently parks downtown will continue to do so once if this project is developed. So in addition to the parcel itself, the proposed tax increment financing boundary includes the adjacent right-of-way. That's because streetscaping improvements and road reconstruction are also proposed as project costs within the project. Take you through a couple of site photos. This is looking east at 6th Street into the site. Here we are on St. Joseph Street looking west the other direction. This is standing adjacent to the historic City Hall, looking north into the site. So Main Street Square would be this direction. A little bit of background on how this project came to be. When the city looked at how to reinitiate a public-private partnership for this lot, acknowledging that it is a critical piece of the downtown fabric and really the next stage of downtown development, they decided to use an RFP method, or a request for proposals, in order to solicit interest from developers who would have the financial resources and the vision really to implement this project in a way that complies with the city's downtown master plan and the city's overall comprehensive plan. So Elevate Rapid City, in partnership with the city, released an RFP in April of 2019, soliciting proposals from interested parties. I believe they received 3 proposals, and the one that you're reviewing today was the one that was selected. This is a conceptual rendering of the project. It's a proposed 10-story mixed-use building. It'll have about 8,000 square feet of commercial use, including retail or restaurant use on the ground floor, 130 apartment units, and 117-room hotel with a conference space. They're also providing a parking component to be used by the development of 330 spaces in a parking garage. Here's a site plan for the proposed development, just to kind of give you a lay of the land. And you'll also review this in more depth because the final plan development for this project will be forthcoming to the Planning Commission soon. But access to the parking lot will be in this direction, parking garage, excuse me. The retail and commercial uses will be along here, and then the conference center in this general area. The proposed project costs for this project include site preparation, cleaning contaminated soils, remediating them, and excavation. It also includes costs for design, engineering, legal, and administrative fees, relocating utilities, portions of the parking structure, and then the streetscaping and street construction. Now, those costs in total are about $14 million. In reviewing the financing for the financials for this project, the gap that was needed to be filled with TIF was for $8,750,000. So that's the amount that they're requesting to be used for these project costs that are identified here. They're also requesting up to $5.94 million to be used for financing at an interest rate of 4.5%. Now, it's important to point out that that total maximum amount of financing is based on if the project takes 20 years to pay off. As we see with many of our TIFs, they don't take the full 20 years to pay off, so this would be sort of a maximum cap on interest that would be included. This particular TIF is proposed to be structured as a grant, which is a relatively new sort of feature, you could say, that was added first from state law for cities to be able to use. But a lot of these project costs, so the site cleaning, the contaminated soils, street reconstruction, a lot of those costs would actually fall under our more traditional TIF policy for public improvements as well. I mentioned this earlier, but this is the proposed TIF boundary. It only includes the public right-of-way and the subject property. An amortization schedule was linked to the agenda and provided for review. The base valuation is based on what the current value of the property is. So since it's city-owned, that would be anticipated to be zero. Once the city decides to create a tax increment district, the Department of Revenue actually officially certifies what that base valuation is. So it's not the role of the city to determine that, but we're estimating that it's zero based on the fact that it's currently city-owned. In looking at projected payoff time, we're using the tax levies from 2020 as an estimate at 19.435, and conservatively looking at a project payoff of 20 years or less. So in their timeline for development, the applicant is anticipating that full build-out, will occur in 2024, and that the property will have an assessed valuation of about $42.8 million at that time. So in 2026, when we collect the taxes on that full assessment, it would be about $717,000 per year, with about a 2% escalation in property valuation each year after that. So those are some of the assumptions that were built into the amortization schedule, and looking at how this project will pay off and what the total value of the project will be after it's built. So we go from zero valuation to $42.8 million starting in 2024 after the project is built. The next series of slides talk about some of the South Dakota codified law statutes and our local Tif policies that we look at when reviewing a proposed district. South Dakota codified law 1198 talks about blight within the area and that the proposed project will advance industrial, commercial, and other economic development features within the state, and that the improvement of the area is likely to significantly enhance the value of substantially all other property in the district and in the area as well. The city's Tif policy identifies several goals or uses of Tif, including to encourage redevelopment, deteriorated or otherwise blighted property, to stimulate economic development, and to facilitate reconstruction and maintenance of the city's street network. With this being a prime location downtown, and with our goals for downtown to increase the number of living units and hospitality operations, this project would fall into those categories. This goes into a little bit more detail about the uses of TIF, so reconstruction of existing streets, administration fees, removal and replacement of contaminated soils, professional fees, and this last one, costs at the discretion of the governing body, which are found to be necessary or convenient to the creation of the tax increment district. And that relates to the grant structure of the project as well. There's additional criteria for evaluation. This goes back to the issue of blight. It looks at whether the project is in conformance with the city's comprehensive plan, that the project would not result in net losses to pre-existing tax revenues to the city or other taxing jurisdictions, that the project demonstrates that it's not economically feasible without the TIF, that it eliminates actual or potential hazards to the public, and that will result in additional development in the target area of downtown Rapid City. There's also discretionary criteria, again, related to blight, and that costs are associated with those for excessive fill or relocation, unusual soil conditions or remediation, et cetera. So just to touch on some of the comprehensive plan goals, I've mentioned that numerous times. We look at infill and redevelopment opportunities and specifically deploying the TIF program for those purposes. Economic growth and stability, creating a livable community. One of our main goals from the downtown master plan was to increase the number of housing units, and adding 130 apartments would certainly be a win for downtown Rapid City and to create a stronger foundation economically for downtown. Our comprehensive plan also talks about a balanced pattern of growth, making good use of our infrastructure investments with an infill site in the downtown area. Those are all features that are really highlighted with this project. And then again, the downtown master plan recommending specifically at opportunities for using TIF as a tool for redevelopment, and specifically the vision for 5th Street and St. Joseph Street parking lot. So our recommendation is to approve the resolution to create a tax increment district and a project plan aligning with the TIF committee's recommendation. And I'll stand for any questions. I also have Luke Jessen, who is the VP of Development for Block 5 LLC. The applicant is here as well.
Thank you, Sarah. I don't see any comments yet. Oh, Haven, but I'm going to jump in because I have quite a few questions. And then I also have a speaker request form from, oh, no, that was for a different item. So I'm actually going to jump in first. I know usually, if you're the chair, you go to the back, but I'm not going to do that today. So first, this is the base valuation of $0. I'm assuming you pointed out that's because it's city property. Do we know the base valuation of the other half of that block? Maybe just land values or something like that without the buildings themselves, just to, kind of get a comparison. If someone were to buy this property from the city, what would the city consider this to be worth, or what would...
That is a great question. We have the ability to look that up right now. Maybe if you move on to your second question, we can follow up with that one.
Absolutely. And so I guess my other question is, like, if the city decided, to just give away the library, would it also be considered worth $0, or is it because it's a parking lot? All city-owned property is assessed at zero. So yeah, in the library example, that would be similar. If there was a redevelopment proposal. We could hypothetically give away the library to be redeveloped as a casino, and that would be seen as like a win in terms of like Tif policy.
Well, I think the answer to that question is no. I don't think that would be a win. argue significant differences between this property and just giving away the library. We did an appraisal of the property several years ago, and I don't have the number right in front of me, but it was slightly over $1 million. Again, that was several years ago, so I would assume the property would theoretically be worth more. Certainly there has been discussion about, hey, let's just list this property for sale and sell it to the highest bidder. I think the concern is if we were to do that, what we are probably going to end up with is a 3 or 4 story building on one half of the lot and a surface parking lot on the other half of the lot to serve that building, similar to, say, the US Bank building or another building like that. So the reason the council at the time decided to go out for proposals is, this is a prime location in Rapid City, and do we want to see something that is going to make a significant impact on the downtown, or do we want to see a 3 or 4 story building with an adjacent surface lot? And the decision at that time was that we would like to, on this corner, in this location, see something that is going to have more of an impact and is going to be a higher level of development. And I would just point out that, all 3 proposals all included the donation of land and a tax increment component to it to get this level of development. If we want this level of development, I think it's safe to assume that either the land or a TIF or both, and frankly, if we could have structured it for them to pay for the land and then they would have just increased the TIF ask. There's a certain number where they need to be to make this work for them or where they're willing to build this, and that number isn't really going to change. But at this point, we decided it was easier just to, instead of trying to make it look like they're paying for the land and then increase the TIF, just be upfront about it. So,
Thank you. So roughly $1 million, probably more, is the answer we have so far about that. Kim.
Thank you. We checked on Rapid Map with the valuation of the properties on the southern half of that block. The land value of all those properties in totality is $840,200. So you're close.
Okay. So that's kind of my first question. Thank you guys for answering that question. Another question was regarding blighted conditions because, as I've read this, some of my information comes from the TIF review material, or the review committee material. I missed that meeting, but I did review the material that was given. But there's site preparation, and there's streetscaping and street reconstruction. Utility relocation, sometimes that's just normal in a project. So I was wondering, how is it different in this project versus any other project? When you're building on land that has been used before, there's utility relocation often.
No. This site is a little different in that a lot of times you don't have the above ground utilities, although in downtown generally you do. But I know in the original proposal, one of the things is, do you want to have the utilities? So we may have to address the utilities in the alley. The one site remediation with this site that was a little unique is that it used to be a gas station, and there is some remediation, although I wouldn't say that's a significant portion of the cost. This is not a TIF that I would say is based on blight. This is really more of an economic development TIF. Although I will say, we've, long before any of our time, really, there was an idea to redevelop this, and it has taken decades more than anyone thought it would to get this site redeveloped. And I think, part of it was after it had been cleared off and the previous development at the site had been cleared off, it was about the time the mall opened and things, and downtown was very concerned about parking. So at that time, the city prioritized creating surface parking. One of the things, and I don't know how much this group has had the discussion, but when we envision our downtown, what do we envision? And one of the things that, we've at a staff level and internally have talked about is, is Main and St. Joe really the appropriate place for, surface parking? Or should we start to look at things off Main and St. Joe and try to see Main and St. Joe as more higher development and things like the Legacy project or like other projects? And frankly, we have other surface lots. If this project is successful, we could potentially start looking at other lots for redevelopment and looking for other areas. I've been with the city since the original proposal, and it's kind of interesting to watch it, and I would like to think we've learned lessons since the original proposal. But the original proposal was to use TIF money to build about a lot or a parking ramp very similar to the one that's across our parking lot, 2-level parking ramp. Why were we going to build it there? Was it because there was a lot of parking needed there, or because that was the best use of that property? No, we were going to build it there because there was a perception we needed parking, and we owned the lot. And it evolved over years. They went and looked at a project, a mixed-use project in Boise, Idaho, that incorporated a ramp and some retail and things, and thought, well, why don't we try to do that? And it has evolved from that into what you see in front of you today. But we've tried to develop this for the last 15 years, and we spent how much, well, not quite 10 years, but it seemed like it on the previous project. And it, even with a significant TIF investment in that project and a land donation, it still wasn't able to get off the ground. And I would point out the TIF in that in 2011 was approved for $23 million. So this is a significant reduction in the TIF expense, and a lot larger contribution financially, I think, from the current developers. And I would also point out they do already have agreements in place with Hyatt Place, and they actually Hyatt is so committed, they actually flew somebody out as part of the presentation that Lloyd made in the original request for proposals.
Okay.
And
Thank you. So soil remediation, you said, probably isn't a huge part of it. I see that there's also parking structure reconstruction. In the TIF review material, it seems like there was some allusion to the city having some benefit from that, but in this material, it looks like there will be there's no current agreements that the city is going to be able to actually benefit directly from, or the citizens, anybody who's not paying for a service there, is going to actually directly benefit from that. So I don't understand why a parking structure would be an eligible TID cost if it's just going to be a privately owned, privately operated parking structure, and there's nothing in place to say that the city's going to benefit from that.
Well, that's why it's structured as a grant. I mean, if you look at the history of our tax increment financing, we've essentially used tax increment financing to expand our infrastructure to new development. So we're paying for water lines or sewer lines or streets or things like that. And, that's a benefit, but also, people think the developers are getting such a good deal, but really we're using the developer to upfront costs that should be our costs. The oversize, the expansion of infrastructure, a lot of that, a lot of that cost should be city costs. So the developers are upfronting it, and so they're getting paid back through the TIF.
Which I agree with that when it comes to actual utilities. But a parking structure that the city is not going to have any access to isn't really a utility that benefits us.
No, which is why, again, it isn't exactly a public improvement. That is why it's structured as a grant. And frankly, other communities have used this more than we have. This is a new use for us. It is different than what we have done in the past. But again, it's a question of whether or not this project, you want this project to get done or not. It's a necessary component. I will say one of the things we learned, for those that recall, we did try to negotiate a public parking component in the previous, and frankly one of the primary, there were a number of reasons why that project failed. Nothing fails, in my opinion, for any one single reason, but I will say one of the primary difficulties in that project was trying to incorporate the public parking component, the dual ownership, how that would work, and the cost. It significantly increased the cost to try to incorporate enough public parking plus enough parking to serve the needs of the development, and it is one of the major reasons why it failed. They still have a pretty large parking component into this, even without a city-owned. Now, there will be some level of public parking, but I don't want to portray this as being a public lot. The city will not own or manage any parking in this building. But, you know, one of the things, to go back to something I talked about earlier, we were going to build a parking ramp on this spot. To show the need in this location, we've been able to, at this point, I believe, relocate virtually everyone in that lot. So how much is the need in that location? I think there are some other areas in downtown where we have a much larger need for public parking, and we could start looking at where those are and where we should expand our parking, and I don't know that it would be this location. I think the benefit is that they are accommodating virtually all of their parking needs, plus maybe some extra onto this lot. So there will be enough for a hotel and for the people living in the apartments. So they are not adding to any parking difficulties downtown at this point.
Isn't that expected in most projects anyway?
Correct. So it
So
is nice,
they're
but
fulfilling normal project expectations.
well, yes and no. I mean, downtown, you don't have to, the parking requirements are less. So, I mean, and you don't have to necessarily provide on-site parking in downtown. We have zero setback, and again, but, you know, would you rather have something like this or a building with a surface lot adjacent to it?
So my point about the parking isn't to say that there's a need for parking. I don't have that kind of data. It's to say that $11 million included in a TID cost for something that the city isn't going to have access to me sounds a little strange. But we have additional people up. I see the applicant wants to speak, but I'll leave that until the end after the planning commissioners have the opportunity to speak as well. Thank you. Haven?
One of my questions was on the parking, and I think maybe you kind of answered that. So there will be no public parking on this property because it would appear the 300 sites would be about adequate for the hotel and the apartments on the property. So, and it sounds like you've located other places to replace the current public parking. Where would that be, and is there contemplated parking structures on this other property?
Madam Chair. So Anna Gilligan is our Parking Enforcement Division Manager, and she has diligently been reaching out to a lot of these permit holders to see why do they use that parking? Do they live downtown? Do they work downtown? Let's find them a closer place to park if at all possible. So it really is a mix of where they're being relocated to. We've about got all those locked down, but there isn't one specific location. It's finding areas and other surface parking lots that we lease out, and we have street permits that can be secured. And so it's been a challenge, but she's been extremely creative and trying to meet the needs of those that currently hold permits to make it a better opportunity for them when they get displaced from this lot.
Okay, and a couple other questions. I know there's a bill in the legislature to expand the allowable costs in a TIF. Is that necessary for this project, passage of that bill?
Madam Chair? No, it wouldn't be, even though it would give the municipalities additional flexibility. If I might, I think the one thing that really helped explain this, because I'm similar to you folks. We've seen so many TIFs. They've really been infrastructure TIFs. We're looking at where's that public improvement, This is more of an economic TIF. And I remind you of when Black Hills Energy came in and secured a TIF to finish offices within their building. I scratched my head because I didn't understand at that time the difference between the economic grant type TIFs and the infrastructure TIFs. And even though this does have some definite infrastructure components, it also has a strong grant component as well.
And that was my thoughts exactly the same as yours when I saw this as to how this would come under the TIF guidelines, and apparently the TIF commission or TIF committee was satisfied with that. What comments, if any, have you received from property owners adjacent to or downtown?
Madam Chair. So this application does not get advertised, even though we do take the items before public meetings, and we did have a TIF committee meeting on this, but we don't send letters out. So, however, Sarah did bring before you recently an initial plan development for this project, and there was public opportunity to speak at that time. Sarah, could you?
The applicant actually does send notification letters to property owners surrounding the proposed district. So that notification does happen similarly to a rezone request or a plan development.
Andre is supposed to kick me under the table.
I'm going to piggyback on Haven's question real quick. So the leaseholders for that parking lot have been, relocated, but that parking lot also serves as after-hours parking and holiday parking and weekend parking. Is there any plan for any increase in those uses for people who are, visiting downtown after hours?
Madam Chair, again, in looking at this, we didn't only look at the permit holders, but we looked at the overall use of the parking lot itself. Currently, it is underutilized, much to our surprise. I, too, thought, what a great location. But with our existing parking structure and the street parking and the type of metering that we've implemented in this area, where that turnover is much quicker, we've just seen less and less use of this surface parking area. So at this point, we don't know the final impact, but it certainly was it's not what it was anticipated to be 10 years ago when we saw the first proposal for this site.
Okay, thank you. And then next I have Eric Hikas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have a couple comments. First of all, Sarah, thank you for the great presentation. And Counselor, thank you for your comments as well. I think this is a fantastic project. I'm an optimist. I believe in not only the tax increment that this will bring in, but the economic waves that it'll create as people living and working in this facility will permeate and infiltrate into the downtown and spend dollars and that sort of thing. That's almost tough to measure, but it's viable. I've seen the use of this kind of tax increment in Billings before, and it was very effective in revitalizing their downtown. So I think we have a measure of other communities utilizing this very same grant kind of process. So I do have a question. Well, actually, I'm going to wait for my question for one more comment. About 10 years ago, we were having these very same conversations about Main Street Square, and there was a lot of worry about displacement of that parking lot, and I think we've had a very positive economic impact from the square on the downtown, and also the property values that it raised as a result of having that critical mass in that area. So we're doing a bit of urban planning here, and there's a lot of vision that's gone into this. I can't tell you how much I think this is the right fit. So you're going to have my vote for it. One question, I guess I'm going to ask somebody to speculate, but what would be the price of one of these apartments if somebody would be willing to maybe offer that up? Or take a guess, or an educated guess. Monthly or whatever, yeah.
Good morning. We would estimate that they'll...
Sorry, I'm sorry, can
oh.
you please identify yourself, your
Yes.
name and your address? Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Luke Jessen. I'm the Vice President of Development for Lloyd Companies, and our office here is at 201 Main Street here in Rapid City. So we will offer studio through 2-bedroom apartments, and we would estimate that they will range anywhere starting at like the upper $800s to lower $900 a month, all the way up to some above $2,000 a month in some of those premier units.
That answers my question. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to comment.
Oh. It's gone to sleep. Okay, Vince is next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's always interesting to go after everyone else because I pretty much concur with everything. And I'm glad Joe Landine was here to explain the history behind this all because I have seen this before. One of the things that I'm a firm believer in deferred payment. I mean, good example of my concern is that I spent 20 years in the Navy. I couldn't get that retirement pay until I served every one of those days. So 20 years can come very fast. So the TIF that we have planned is a deferred payment, and I think it's a good plan, and I appreciate everyone coming in to expressing their concerns for this project, because this is not the first time we've been through this. We missed an opportunity, but a better one seems to have come along. So thank you.
All right, next we have Karen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I go back quite a while, obviously, and I can remember when there were businesses along where that parking lot was, and through the negotiations that we had years ago, that didn't come through. What was going to be planned that didn't come through, and we ended up with that parking lot. And a lot of people in this town were upset because it was a flat parking lot and nothing happened to this. Didn't improve the city at all in their minds and kind of went against what was promised. And then along comes the chance to have a TIF several years ago, and that was an expensive TIF and didn't go anywhere, obviously, because they couldn't make it work. So now we have this one in front of us. And number one, I think that will change the dynamics of our city, just like the Main Street Square did, as Eric pointed out. And there's some good things, and there's some other things that make people kind of wonder, obviously, because we're talking about parking. I think from the parking standpoint, our church just across the street has a large parking lot, and we have been inundated with people requesting parking for our parking lot over time, over the last 5 years or so. And we've been able to accommodate some of them, you know, in a temporary status with some caveats that it's our parking lot and we can make them leave, so it's not really a safe parking lot for everybody. But I know that if this is approved, and I'm assuming it will eventually get approved, that down the road we'll have to look at other parking structures or something. And I think that will come about because as our city grows, there's going to be a need for things like that. You know, you have people that live in this structure and they have enough parking for everybody, and I'm assuming it's extra parking for somebody that wants to visit or something like that. But there could be parties in the hotel or whatever, and there'll be people that'll be all over the place, and people will scream and say, "We want more parking." And so something will happen down the road. I just, things change, and you've got to find ways to make that accommodation. So I'm not as concerned about the parking. I am, but I'm not. I mean, I'm concerned more short term until something does happen. But I think eventually we'll get to that point. I just hope it doesn't take 20 plus years to do all this stuff that we've been trying with that particular part of town. And the town is also growing to the east, and we see the new building that's going up just down the street from us, and they've needed parking, and that's in the eastern part of the city, but nobody pays too much attention that way because it's kind of out of the way, but it's growing on all the way to the School of Mines, And there'll be some need down there also for some other parking. So I think that's going to happen. I have a couple questions. One is about the historic preservation. I think they have to go through that, and I don't know how that deals with this hotel, Alex Johnson Hotel, and you can talk to that, Sarah.
May I address that, Madam Chair? Thank you. Good question. The Historic Preservation Commission reviewed this application 2 weeks ago after the State Historic Preservation Office requested a case report. So a case report is the documentation in the process that looks more closely at what the potential for adverse effect to a historic property, in this case a historic district, would be. The Preservation Commission looked at this very closely. They vetted it carefully, and they asked great questions about, you know, this is going to change the skyline of Rapid City. It will. It's a 10-story structure. It's taller than the Alex Johnson. There are standards in the state that say that new construction in historic districts, if they exceed 10% variation of the average of the historic properties on that block, that's when the potential for an adverse effect or an adverse effect can occur. So they looked at that. They also looked at the benefits that this project will bring to the downtown area, and they looked a lot into the specifics of the design, the ground floor facade, the walkability, the transparency, and how overall the downtown character, that it's very compatible with downtown character. They asked about archaeological, what if there's archaeological resources? They asked a lot of really great questions and looked at it closely. They did make a recommendation to agree with the findings in the case report that the project minimizes any harm to the historic district, and we're recommending that it be approved. The State Historic Preservation Office will now review the project and the minutes from the HPC meeting. So that process is still underway, and if the SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office, ultimately determines that it's an adverse effect, the City Council will make that final determination. But it has been reviewed by a Preservation Commission, and they are recommending that it be approved while acknowledging that it is a change to our skyline, but that it's part of the future of our city.
Okay, thank you. I knew that they would weigh in some way, and I just wondered where that stood. I have a question as far as the legal description. I looked at the legal description, and then I looked at your map, and the map shows that all of Fifth Street is in that tax increment district, but all of Fifth Street is, not necessarily in your legal description. So that has me, confused, I guess, and I don't know what happens when it gets to the state level if they go, wait a minute, that's not legal.
Yeah, I will add that the graphic in this presentation was created by myself. I used PowerPoint to draw a general boundary. So we do have a more legally accurate project boundary vicinity map that's attached to the agenda and that went out with the public notification. So I apologize if my graphic for presentation purposes doesn't perfectly line up with that, but we certainly will double check that legal description and make sure everything's correct there, because that's very important. So.
Thank you. I didn't know if they were going to work in Fifth Street or not, so I wanted to make sure that that was included if that's part of the legal. There's another question I have. I'm going to stop for now. I know there's another question, but I can't remember what it was right now. Thank you, Sarah, and everybody else.
So I saw John's light up earlier. John, did you have something to say, or I know you turned it off. I just wanted to check with you.
Most of them have been answered, but
Okay.
Parking is, we don't have a parking problem here. We have a walking problem. I mean, every other major city, you walk. This place, try to get to a Wild hockey game in St. Paul, they don't have any parking. Everybody gets there. You walk. People pay to walk. They pay personal trainers to walk them. Come on. Anyway, my question was, are the power lines going to be put underground in that alley?
Yes, that would be the plan. We're working closely with Black Hills Power to relocate the lines underground. There's some additional utilities other than just power, but we're coordinating closely with all of the utility companies to relocate those.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Haven.
Following the action by this commission this morning, what additional requirements or approvals are necessary from the city?
If I can address that, Madam Chair. If approved by the Planning Commission, then the next step in the process is for the City Council to publicly acknowledge the proposal on their agenda. We call that a set for hearing. So that would occur on the next City Council agenda, and then it would go to a City Council meeting for an additional public hearing. If the district is created and the project plan is adopted, the step after that is for a development agreement to be agreed upon between the developers and the city.
Thank you, Sarah. Karen?
One further question came to me. In the items that you listed here, the actual creating the tax increment district, the resolutions were not attached. Will those be attached then to the city council?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other planning commission questions?
I'll make a motion.
Oh, before you do that, I do want to give the applicant, I mean, you can make a motion, but I would like to give the applicant's representative an opportunity to continue speaking.
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to thank everyone for your consideration, as well as thank city staff that they've been amazing helping us work through this process and navigate both the TIF and all of the project approvals, things like that. I wanted to jump in on the questions regarding parking. Is one of the things that we know people require downtown is places to park when they're coming. That's why public parking exists, is for all of the businesses, the civic facilities, things like that. And our goal in proposing this and including the parking that we did is to not further burden the parking system that Rapid City has. That we know that a development of this scale is going to require significant parking. And to do a development of this scale, we would have probably asked that the city construct the facilities of that level, which would have created a liability for the city, likely a bond or some type of financial obligation, both for construction and maintenance. And since we know the great burden that this project will have from a parking facility, that's why we're asking for the TIF, is that we will finance that on our back, we'll maintain it on our back, and take on that liability knowing that it benefits our development and doesn't further burden the city's parking system. So I'm happy to answer any other questions that you may have, but thank you for your consideration.
Do we have any other additional questions for the applicant? Thank you. So Vince made a motion to approve. Okay, and John seconded it. Is there any discussion on the motion? I'm going to pipe in and say that I'm not against this project. I think it's a wonderful project. I'm against the use of TIFs to fund the project. Yeah, and leave it there. So, no other discussion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Motion carries. And I think we get Eric back.
Excellent job.
Yeah, thank you.
I get to come back for the easy part. I think that's the end of our regular agenda. Are there any staff items today?
Yes, please, Mr. Chair. We would like to take this opportunity to introduce two new current planners with our division. First, we have Marlo Capsa. Marlo is a native of Belle Fourche, and she is back living in South Dakota. She's got extensive both public and private sector planning experience, and we're very excited to have her on board. And sitting next to her is Tanner Halonen, who comes to us from Canada. And Tanner also has a lot of extensive public planning experience. So we've got two very good experienced planners on board, and you will see a lot of them in the future. Don't scare them away, please.
We'll do our best. Welcome. We're glad to have the help. We certainly need it. Other staff items today? Vicki?
No, I just wanted to, for a moment, just thank you for the full vetting of the cultivation facility. That really did launch, I think, how we will be able to bring those forward to you in the future. As you know, the dispensaries was kind of a rocky road. We were all learning along the way. Those in full were appealed to City Council. They took a different course of action. And I believe that the vetting, the thorough vetting that this body does at this level does assist the council for those that want to come out and look at and view these meetings to see all the issues that are addressed. And when you ask those questions, they just don't set aside that same amount of time at the council level. And so it's great when I can just refer them back to this meeting. You folks did an excellent job this morning, so thank you for that.
All right, Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome to your new staff members. Glad to have you. Got a question about ex parte communications. If someone from the City Council wants to contact one of us regarding an issue that has been on our agenda and may be on the agenda in the future, would that be considered ex parte communications if one of us was to have a conversation with them about that?
I'll defer to Kinsley.
Kinsley?
I was pressed the wrong button. There we go. No, that wouldn't be an ex parte communication. You're talking about a communication after the Planning Commission meeting? That's fine. You can give them information that they need. If anything, it would be the City Council member needing to tell the public about the communication that they might have had with you. If they get information that is something that hasn't been presented or at the City Council meeting or won't be anticipated to be presented.
What about if something is that we defer to the next meeting or another meeting down the line and we haven't made a decision on it yet and they want to discuss it with us?
Well, it all depends upon the information that you're getting. So is it information that has been presented during the public meeting at Planning Commission yet?
It might be. That's the question. I've been contacted by one of the council members, and they wanted to talk to me about an issue, and I don't know what they have to say. I just don't want to even get involved if it's better just not to do anything. For example, we had a Meade County Commissioner wanted to contact me regarding an issue about something that we had actually approved here. Mm-hmm. And I decided not to talk to them because they still had it on their agenda. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, it's basically the idea is to get all of the information out in the public so that everyone can make a decision based upon the same information. So that's why you want to, the duty is upon whatever council member, commission member, is getting that information. The duty is upon them to disclose that they've had these side conversations.
Okay, that clears it up for me. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Vicki?
we make it clear to applicants and anyone that asks that they do not have the right to contact Planning Commission prior to a meeting, that, and we don't contact you either. If we do, we disclose that in a meeting as well. We try to ensure that all of us hear the same information at the same time, and you make the decision in this room. A little difference is that the council are elected, they have constituents, so there are times where they are contacted by an applicant that is still, in essence, ex parte communication, and then it's up to them to disclose it in a meeting. What I do like about this team is when you are contacted, we hear often someone hitting their mic saying, I must disclose I've had an ex parte communication, I didn't participate in the discussion, and encourage them to come to the meeting and share their opinion.
Right. And if I could just add on to that, one of the reasons why I wanted to get it cleared up is because I don't want to recuse myself, because I am obviously interested in maintaining that separation, because I do believe we all practice that in good faith, and so does the staff. So thank you.
Thanks, Vince. Haven.
This might be a good time with the new staff members. Could you or somebody on your staff send out an organizational chart of your office with the names so we become a little more familiar with everything?
Well, we just completed that this week, so we had so many vacant spots, it was hard to send that chart out, but we've been filling them up in the current planning division and other divisions as well, so we can certainly do that.
All right. Any
Miss-
other item? Yeah.
Mr. Chair, can I add one more thing?
Sure.
In terms of ex parte communications, I think that Carla and maybe even Wade had annually given presentations on that. And so I have not had the time to get things together to give a presentation, but I'll plan on doing that at one of the upcoming Planning Commission meetings.
And Mr.
Great.
Chair, I
Yeah.
still have all their great handouts if you want them, Kinsley.
Perfect. Any other items from the commission today? All right, Mike Gallagher made the motion to adjourn and Karen seconded it. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.